Oops, didn't mean to shut you off there. Anyway, she loved the river, all whole life, spent almost every day. Well, I guess when it was frozen over, she didn't, but loved to go down and play in the river. And she could run, so I loved to watch her run in this field and up and down this street. And I think I'll have to double check, but I rode my bike up and down here, and she would chase me and run me down and catch up with me. And I had my brother Mike kind of follow me in a car, and I think I was going 30 miles an hour, so maybe that's impossible. But she was a fast dog. She was a wonderful dog. And neighbor goes by. Hi, neighbor. It's still a good neighborhood. And so many good memories of that dog out here. Um, but she saved my life. She brought me out of my depression, and I would take every night. I'd come home and take a walk with her, and we'd go all the way around this field. It's a big loop, goes down around the corner, way down. You can't see it, but I mean it's at least an hour walk, and that was our thing. We would do almost every night together, and that was a great help to me. And then oh, I think. Probably about 14 years had passed, and my good friend Jeff Fagan, he was still in a nursing home, and he would get sick several times a year, and they thought he would die, but he didn't, and he was very sick at this point, and he still recognized me when I would come in and see him and talk to him, and he'd tear up and tell me he loved me, and but he had very bad pneumonia, and the doctors had said, we're just going to let him. He's not going to make it much longer, and rather than keep him, we could pump him full of antibiotics and stuff, and maybe keep him alive. And he'd been in there for so long, and his mom, who was a great friend of mine, Virginia. She's gone too. Decided to let him go, but it took like a week, and they didn't give him any food or water, and he just slowly died, and I had to watch that, and that was a very hard time, and growing up, it was Jeff and myself and another friend, Mike Gibson, and we hung out together all the time. They were my family, and when Jeff died finally, and I sought Mike out, and we spent a lot of time together. And he was having a hard time too. He was depressed. He had quit he was a cameraman with KHQ TV in Spokane, and he'd moved to Idaho, and he was the only guy in Idaho for KHQ. So he did all of the stories. He was the reporter and the cameraman and everything for KHQ in North Idaho. He loved that job, but he, for some reason, had decided to quit, and I tried to talk him out of it, and but he just couldn't see any other way. And as soon as he did, he regretted it, and tried to get his job back, and he couldn't. And I, because he worked at KHQ for many many years, I had a lot of plumbing customers, and I tried to talk to them, and they understood, and I believe that he would have gotten his job back eventually, but he just couldn't get it back right then. And he would always talk about how depressed he was, and especially with Jeff, our best friend Jeff had died and everything, and I was going out pretty often over to Idaho to see him and spend time with him, and try to cheer him up. And we were supposed to go for a bike ride. This was a few months after Jeff had died. And well, it was a Sunday, and it was I was tired. I wasn't, I was kind of depressed too, and I called him up and said, okay, I'm loading up the bikes, let's go for a bike ride. And he said, I'm just so depressed. I don't want to go today. And I should, in my heart, I felt like I need to push this. I should have done it, but I didn't. I said, well, yeah, I wouldn't mind just staying home watching football today. So we'll go next week. And the next day he killed himself. And boy, that, between Jeff and everything else, that really put me. I was in a bad spot for quite a while there, and it was so good to have my only companion, my dog, uh, Belle. She understood. I mean, everybody knew that I had all these lifelong friends die, and it's like they understood, but they didn't want to talk about it. Nobody wanted to talk about it with me, except Jeff's mom. She talked about it. She understood. So Jeff's mom was like about the only person I could talk to, and but I didn't see her that often. But I had my dog. I had Belle, and she understood. And she every time I'd come home, I had my dog, and we built a deeper relationship than we even had before, and. And right up until she died, she was still just a puppy, still ran, did everything. And then she just went downhill real fast at about 13 years, shortly after Mike and Jeff died. And took her to the vet in Millwood. And I ended up working. We had that vet the whole time, great vet. And Dr. Lohr, and the person he sold the practice to is our vet for the new dogs now. But I brought her in, and he said, she's been a good dog. But she's not going to last much longer. Her systems are shutting down. Her liver's shutting down, and I think it was going into a weekend. I think it was a Friday or something, and she was having a hard time. And he said, she's just take her home and keep her comfortable, and bring you if it gets bad, you can bring her in next week, or and we'll put her down. And so I brought her home on a Friday, and I think we took one last walk out there very well, and she you could tell she wanted to run, she wanted to play with me, she wanted to cheer me up, and I was so sad that she was dying, and we got about halfway across the field, and she just couldn't make it anymore. And I had to pick her up and carry her back. And that just put her over. I could just see in her eyes, and she wanted to make me happy. And she couldn't understand why I was so sad. And I was sad because I knew she was dying. And I brought her into the house and put her in her bed. And this was Saturday, I think. And she just was shaking, and she was peeing on herself and drooling, and she just, I don't know, she just looked at me, and anyway, I took her to the emergency room, the animal emergency room. I didn't want to have Dr. Lohr come in on a Saturday. Oh, he would have though, but so I took her to the emergency room, and I told her I was coming. And I was trying not to cry, but I couldn't help it. And so I just had Belle in my arms when I got to the animal emergency, and brought her in. They knew I was coming, and there was other people with dogs, and they was so nice. They did such a good job. They brought me right into the back, and they had me put her on a table and had me sit with her, and I was crying and they were crying. And so they came in and they said, we'll do this real quick. And they gave her a sedative first. And so she stopped shaking, which was wonderful, and stopped crying. And she was looking at I had her paw in my hand, and we were looking into each other's eyes. And she was definitely there, I don't know. Do dogs have a soul, a spirit? I don't know. But Gracie sure did. Sorry, Gracie. Gracie's my dog now. I'm sorry. And I think all dogs have something in there, but they're not just an animal. They love us. They give their lives for us. They do anything for us. And I had hold of Belle's paw, and she was looking at me, and they said, okay, well, we're going to give her the other shot, and she'll just go to sleep, And even though she wasn't shaking anymore, she was still moving. Her paw was moving in my hand. She was breathing. She was looking at me. I could see in her eyes she was looking at me. And they gave her the final injection, and then she just wasn't there anymore. It was so obvious. It was like, you know, her spirit, or whatever Belle was gone, you know, and she was just dead weight. And it just, if you've experienced that, you totally understand what I'm talking about. It's like whatever being was in that animal that I loved so much was gone. And I was crying, and again, the vets were crying, everybody's crying, and they brought me in a blanket, and we put her in a blanket, and I took her out to the car and put her in the back of the car and drove her home, and cried all the way home. But at that point, that was like the thing that was broke the straw that broke the camel's back there, you know, and that put me into a hard time for quite a while. And that was before I had been diagnosed with anxiety and ADHD and dyslexia. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just knew that I was in bad shape. And I didn't have a dog to help me out with it anymore. And anyway, that's my putting down the dog story. And I don't want to talk about it no more.